So House Bill 563, on my slide, I'll just read you what I wrote on this paragraph. It says, this bill began as an open borders bill, not private school vouchers. Another bill, House Bill 149, contained voucher language, but it stalled early in session. Suddenly, a low threat, House Bill 563 passed out of committee, and the substitute bill was filed in a Friday news dump, adding the voucher language, but only for public schools. Funding for all-day kindergarten was promised by House leadership in order to make the bill more palatable. Private schools were added back in, and kindergarten funding was taken away at the last second. A bill that helped spark 6 sickouts by JCPS teachers 2 years ago barely got a whimper during a pandemic, and an elaborate distraction scheme orchestrated by their own union leaders. And that's referring to 2019. Following a contentious and questionable union election, JCTA members moved from angry to gobsmacked when any one of 3 of their endorsed House reps could have stopped the bill from passing and didn't. But this isn't even the first time this has happened. If we didn't know better, we would think our own union leaders want vouchers to come to pass. And I also just published an article on Dear JCPS, pretty much telling this story in more detail. So I encourage you to go to dearjcps.com and look at the story that I have put out there that goes into a little bit more detail, and also references the instance from 2019, which, as I mentioned, is also a radio program that we did a couple of weeks ago and is available on soundcloud.com under the Forward Radio channel. So the next slide, like I said, this is a slide presentation that I will also be putting out on dearjcps.com. The older version of it is already out there under Connect the Dots. The next slide is about EdChoice Kentucky. EdChoice Kentucky is a Kentucky nonprofit that was started in 2015, I believe that's what that says. And the president, his name is Charles Leis, L-E-I-S. The vice president is Andrew Vandiver. And one of the directors is Gary Houchins. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about who each of those individuals are. And see if I can check time here. I don't know what time I started recording. Huh. Sorry about this. I got a little confused here. All right, so EdChoice Kentucky. You can see on my slides, I just have a screenshot from their website showing their current officers. Gary Houchins is their current secretary, and the Catholic community also is pro-voucher, and there's a picture from the Record newsletter showing the school choice rally with all the people with the yellow scarves, and the Archbishop wearing a scarf, part of the rally. And Charles Leis is with the Catholic Education Foundation, and Vandiver is also with the Catholic Conference of Kentucky. So there's some overlap there between those 2 individuals. I'm going to go into a little bit more detail about all 3 of these names that I mentioned. You probably heard me say Gary Houchins' name as the EdChoice board member, Kentucky board member, Kentucky Board of Education member, who was who Julie Rocky Adams had a chance to cast a no vote in his confirmation when I was explaining how Bevan had appointed all of those individuals, and the consent order separated out that one confirmation. So Gary Houchins is that name that I was referring to. So I'll go into a little bit more detail about him again as well. So this slide that I have just shows Charles Leis's LinkedIn profile. Again, Catholic Education Foundation. He's also a board director for Trinity High School, another private Catholic school, and president for EdChoice Kentucky. And then I also have a screenshot from an article just referencing the foundation and their scholarships that they give out. And of course, they're going to want to be able to get more money for their foundation that gives out scholarships. So he has a vested interest, a direct interest in seeing this bill pass. And so I also have a screenshot from this year. This is one of the updates that I've made, is that he is still continuing to testify in our committee meetings. I have a screenshot of him testifying on March 16th during the House Bill 563 committee testimony. And he describes himself during that video, which I have a hyperlink to the video, that where he describes himself as one of the early architects of the bill. So EdChoice, 2 years later, president of EdChoice is still influencing this bill and how it's worded and how it's written. And one thing that's not clear from this statement is whether he's referring to the bill when it was still the open borders bill that would allow students to attend schools in a different, for the policy to be created for students to attend schools in a different district. And before it had the voucher language, because he could be referring to being an early architect of House Bill 149 and whatever the version 2 years ago was for the voucher bill, because he has been involved in all of that. So I don't know if he really was involved in the bill when it was strictly a open borders bill. That part was not made clear when he identified himself that one of those final days of testimony. So the next screen I have is about Andrew Vandiver, and it shows that he was one of the co-founders when the organization was formed. And so I have a screenshot from the PDF that's filed with the Secretary of State's office. And I also have a screenshot from 2016 where he shared an editorial to the Catholic Conference of Kentucky Facebook page, where he is also the associate director. So again, overlapping between his role in EdChoice Kentucky, as well as the Catholic Conference, the Catholic community, and the scholarship money, funding scholarships to go to private schools, and finding ways to divert those funds from our tax coffers to Catholic schools in particular, in his case. And there's a screenshot from KET's Kentucky Tonight with Renee Shaw. I was a guest on their program along with Charles Lease and Andrew Vandiver and Eric Kennedy from the Kentucky School Board Association. And the four of us talked back then. That was 2018, I believe. The four of us discussed vouchers and pros and cons, as you can imagine, which side I was on. And there is just another description there that confirms Andrew Vandiver's connection to the Catholic Conference of Kentucky and Charles Lease with EdChoice. The next slide I have is about one of the lobbyists who EdChoice hired. And so Andrew Vandiver is her point of contact for EdChoice. Her name is Julia Krigler, and she's with Americans for Prosperity. She started up the Kentucky branch in 2018, and Americans for Prosperity is ALEC, American Legislative Exchange Council. So that is a local entity that filed to start lobbying in Kentucky just a few years ago. So all of this success that they've had getting these bills introduced and passed started when they started spending all their money in our legislature. And so these votes reflect the persistence and the relationships and the good old boy network, and maybe the gifts and trips and whatever they're spending on lawmakers in order to buy their votes. I mean, maybe I shouldn't use that exact word, but because we can't prove it, but buy curry favor. When I say buy, I mean like curry, to warm them to the idea of their legislation that benefits their donors, right? And this is money that's going to their campaigns and helping them get reelected. So what kind of deals? We don't know what the deals are. What kind of deals are they making? We don't really know for sure. So there are a couple of other groups on here that she was representing as well: National Alliance for Public Charter Schools and Pegasus Institute. So those are two other groups that I will mention. But there's also a tweet on here that shows that she was tweeting about ALEC in Colorado when Betsy DeVos made a presentation to legislators about school choice, and she tweeted a couple other ALEC legislators, including a couple of them that are still there. One of them actually votes pretty good on education most of the time, and that's Alice Forgy Kerr. But also Kimberly Moore Poser is another one that's tweeted on here. Five Boy Mom is her handle. And so these are some legislators that we know are probably not going to be the ones to side with us, but there are some in the middle who maybe don't realize that they're propping up a false agenda when they support these bills. And if we can show them that the constituents and the voters and the rank and file teachers and the taxpayers of Jefferson County really want something different than what this handful of decision makers and leaders and entrenched self-dealing, backroom deal making, political campaign donating, and career building cabal of individuals are doing, maybe they will do the right thing. Because I've been saying that this is an inside job. This is an insurrection. They are taking advantage of a pandemic, and they are passing disingenuous, harmful legislation that is unconstitutional. It's going to be fought in court if we still have a court system at the end of all of this to challenge it. If we still have resources to challenge it, they're going to be wasting so much of our taxpayer time and money, and court systems, jamming the court systems with this unnecessary legislation when they could be just simply fully funding our schools and not doing more pension sewer bill tactics like they did with the pension bill to get shady legislation passed. So the next slide I have is more about Joel Adams, who is with the Kentucky Public Charter Schools Association. He was the registered agent when they started this organization up. So remember, Kentucky Charter Schools Association, and then it became Kentucky Public Charter Schools Association. They stuck the word public in there probably to continue to gaslight us into thinking that they weren't private. They weren't just looking for private school charters, right? Private charters. If they're using public dollars, then they wanted to pretend like they were public too, you know, like the public had the same level of oversight and accountability, transparency that they do, and they don't. But anyway, current officers included Julia Krigler, the name we just saw, along with individuals and entities listed at time of formation, including Hal Heiner and Wayne Lewis. So this goes back all the way to 2011. So this was one of the things that I was pointing out to people back in 2019, that our current, at the time, our current commissioner and our current chair for the Kentucky Board of Education had been trying to figure out a way to work their way into this position to deal themselves a favorable hand for quite some time. And now they were the commissioner and the chair of the Kentucky Board of Education, which is why on his first day in office, our new governor, Governor Beshear, dismantled this board, rightfully so. They had figured out a way to stack the board with people that were going to curry their own interests instead of what was in the best interest of taxpayers and voters. So that's alarming. I think that had a lot to do with why we were able to get so many senators to see why Gary Houchins in particular, his confirmation should not be confirmed. The next slide I have is just showing that Joel Adams is an entrepreneur as well. Many people who get into the charter school business do so because it's very lucrative. And so I put this in here simply to show that, you know, some of the people that are doing this may have come at this from an investment perspective, just like I think the mayor's father and David Jones, you know, his venture capital entity, our former board chair. I think that many people do get into this because they know that it can be potentially lucrative, and they're just waiting for the bill to pass so that they can sit back and start funneling the money, right? Because the scholarship tax credit administrators get to keep a percentage of the money that they dole out. So it's actually a pretty easy way to get some evergreen money. So the next slide I have is about Gary Houchins when as Ed Choice Director. He is a member of the board of directors and has been for 7 years and 5 months. Again, he's listed on their website. I put a screenshot of an article that he wrote about me in November of 2016 when I did an opinion piece blasting the Courier-Journal for the endorsements that they made to our school board, because they didn't seem to know that we are fighting privatizers, and some of the people that they endorsed were on the wrong side. So I wrote a piece warning them that they had picked the wrong people and why. And he picked up my piece and critiqued it. And so that even led to us having a coffee, which I might even have that recording somewhere that I can share at a later date. But that's who Gary Houchins is. And he's also listed on this document, the Kentucky Charter School Association organization, along with Milton Seymour. And Milton was serving as the interim chair of the Kentucky Board of Education before Hal Heiner became the official chair. And again, Julia Kriegler listed because this was the organization that started without the word public and then became public. And so I have a screenshot of both, just demonstrating who some of those names are that you see overlap with. There's another group here called Kids First Louisville. It has another business developer, David Nickley's listed here. They seem to be keeping themselves separate from these other groups. They don't appear to be intertwined, but I went out to Facebook and happened to notice that Kentuckians for Progress had been operating under the assumed name of Kids First, and it was going by the name Kentucky Charter School Project on Facebook. So they had turned the Kids First Louisville Facebook page into Kentucky Charter School Project, as if they had said, here, you know, we've got a Facebook page already going, use it. And so I had grabbed a screenshot of that at the time, but then later I went back and it's gone. So I have a screenshot of where you can see that the page I requested is no longer available. So I happened to just get a screenshot of it with when it still had the same orange block and photograph, same look and feel as what will become. And I have another slide that shows that in much more elaborate detail. The different iterations over time, 2010, 2011, 2013, and 2018. How it went from Kentuckians for Progress with David Nickley's and Kentucky Charter School Association, formed by Hal Heiner, Wayne Lewis, and Bill Schreck. And then Joel Adams, formed in 2011, current KBE chair Hal Heiner and Wayne Lewis, Julia Kriegler, Milton Seymour. All these names just kind of keep popping up. So you recall from the last slide, Kids First Louisville, which went by the name Kentucky Charter School Project, operated under the assumed name under Kentuckians for Progress. which is affiliated with David Nickley since 2010. Magically, this group has morphed into Kentucky Public Charter Schools Association, an organization affiliated with Heiner, Lewis, Seymour, Houchins, and Adams dating back to 2011. Both groups use the same graphics for their logo and cover photos on Facebook. So I've got another slide that just shows that in more detail. All right, so this is not the first time this has happened, is another slide that I've done showing where was Julie Rocky Adams when Senate Resolution 240 was brought to pass. I took a screenshot of the count when we're in the W's. There were only 5 people whose names were left to be called, and they had skipped over Julie. They didn't record her vote. And we were like, I was there. I was looking over the gallery railing, wondering where did my senator go? And recently, I happened to go back and look at the video and happened to notice that you can actually see her walking behind Senator Meredith when Meredith is explaining his no vote. So she was 3 or 4 votes away from being called, and she's on the phone. Why is she on the phone? Who is she talking to? Who is she getting directions from? Who is telling her whether or not they need her vote and what they're going to give her in exchange for her vote? I mean, who knows exactly what that call could be about? But Senator Webb was talking and explaining her no vote when Julie reappeared and gave a thumbs up to the board tally operator, and her vote went from being white, as it's shown here on this slide, well, white just simply means not recorded yet, to green with a yes. She gave the final, she wasn't final, she sneaked it in before there were still 5 left to go, but we knew how the other 5 were going to vote because it's party line stuff, and she's endorsed by JCTA, so we were hoping she was going to support public education and say no to the confirmation of Gary Houchins, and slipped in a yes vote when there were still 5 other votes to be tallied, and the confirmation passed by 1 vote. So if she had voted no instead of yes, the confirmation would have failed. Ed Choice would have been stopped dead in its tracks, and you wouldn't have been able to mention Ed Choice ever again, just like you wouldn't have been able to mention charters ever again. You know, there are certain things that just get a dirty word associated with them, and we missed our opportunity to shut them down, shut vouchers down completely. And then there's another little article that appeared in Forward Kentucky about the switcheroo that they did, putting Houchins on a different resolution so that he could get a new term, because he actually had been there longer and his term would have expired sooner. So they moved him around as well. So I have a link to that story also. Then the remaining slides, as I mentioned, there's the George Fisher, Mayor Fisher's dad's connection. Phil Moffitt, my former House rep, is also listed on this document, as are some SCALA ties and some GLI ties, Greater Louisville Inc., the Chamber. Again, putting business interests and outside elite, wealthy elite interests ahead of those who are truly the vested stakeholders in our public schools, those who are actually paying the bill, meaning our taxpayer dollars, and those who are actually the customers, meaning the public that attends those schools. So shame on all of these individuals that I've named for working behind the scenes to try to manipulate outcomes that are not in the best interest of our students and of our community. And shame on these lawmakers who are allowing it to happen. And again, our House could have also stopped the voucher bill by 1 vote. Hopefully, JCTA is working on their House reps and can get all 3 of them to shape up and show up to when it comes time, Monday or Tuesday. But I think focusing on the Senate is where we're going to have the greater success. And again, I'll tell you why. When we go back, let me actually go back to this slide for a second. The final tally, as I mentioned, was 17-19. It would have been 18-18, which would have not been, a tie would not have been enough to confirm. You have to have a majority. So The 17 who voted with us, we only need 19 votes. So if the 17 who voted with us back then could be made aware, hopefully they would continue to vote with us again. I think they will. I think Meredith continued to vote with us, for example, in his last testimony. And so if we can just find two middle of the road senators who are not really sure one way or the other to come on over and give us that benefit of the doubt one more time, we might be able to do that. We might be able to make the Senate, make the difference in the Senate. So BIPS, Bluegrass Institute for Public Policy Solutions, is another slide I have on here from the Secretary of State's website. It was formed back in 2003, and you can see Jim Waters' name on here. He's still around. And you can also see Matt Bevan's partner, Christopher Derry, D-E-R-R-Y, was one of the names at the time of formation. And I put a different screenshot from Waycross Partners that shows Derry and Matt Bevan serving as members of their hedge fund partnership. So that shows the relationship between Matt Bevan and Chris Derry in 2008. And Derry goes all the way back to 2003 with the formation of BIPS. And BIPS is a think tank, an astroturf group, as we call it, that is funded by State Policy Network, which is a Koch brothers organization. So again, ties to this dark money, outside interests, predatory practices, same cabal of people that have been working to get certain legislators elected from Mitch McConnell on down to the state, many in our state legislature as well. So the next slide shows connections between Phil Moffitt, Milton Seymour, Jim Waters, and Jerry Stevenson from 2009. It also shows, I have another slide showing Kentuckians advocating reform in education, Hal Heiner, Wayne Lewis, and Milton Seymour, going all the way back to 2011. And it was formed on the same day as Kentucky Public Charter School Association. So it makes you think that somebody turned in the paperwork on behalf of both of them at the same time. So maybe whatever law firm that they're using, et cetera, might have been involved in that. I have another thing on here that has a resume of Donna Hargens on the left and Wayne Lewis on the right. And it shows that they both worked for Wake County Public Schools in Raleigh, North Carolina. They overlapped from 2008 to 2011. Just thought that was an interesting coincidence, since that privatization agenda is something that they both brought here to Louisville. I have more information on Hal Heiner, showing his connections to the different entities that I've mentioned, as well as serving on the board of trustees for Summit Academy, a private school. I've got a screenshot of House Speaker Bam Carney. I believe he's House Speaker. He has been ill and has not been present in Frankfurt for a couple of years, but his name is, he's still in that seat. But this was when he was still there every day. And he and Wayne Lewis were seen, this was before Wayne was commissioner. Wayne would be seen whispering in Bam Carney's ear about the answers to whatever questions people had about the bills. And you can see this document shows that Mike Wilson and Bam Carney also served together on this nonprofit called Transform Education Kentucky, started in 2012. And it also has Ben Cundiff, who was a member of the Kentucky Board of Education that Bevan had appointed, and also Bridget Blom-Ramsey, who's with the Pritchard Committee. So just an interesting combination of names, you know, just to keep in mind. And then I've got Kentucky Pastors in Action Coalition, which was had been around for longer than since they filed. They filed, I think, in 2018, even though we know that they were around in 2015. Pastor Stevenson also took some funding from BAEO, we understand, which was a pro-charter group that also received funding from Betsy DeVos. And in 2014, he applied to open a charter school in Indiana with former JCPS Superintendent Stephen Dashner. You're going to hear Dashner's name probably coming up in the future as well. It shows here Jerry Stevenson worked at Ed Choice. It shows educational consultants, Stephen Dashner and Jerry Stevenson, Larry Coleman, Cecil Bly, Jerry Stevenson. Some documents that were obtained through open records show that they had some money issues. So just some stuff you can read up on if you want to track down these slides and see more. I've got a slide on SCALA. That stands for Steering Committee for Action on Louisville's Agenda. And they were formed in 2017. And some of the names that came up there, David Jones, the father, as well as Sandra Frazier and Ed Glasscock and Michael Mountjoy and Jordan Harris with Pegasus Institute, Kent Euler with GLI. I saw his name earlier. I don't think I said it out loud, but I did mention GLI. A lot of repeated names coming up. And then another slide on Pegasus Institute and Jordan Harris, showing that he was a policy fellow at the Koch Institute. So he did get trained, classically trained on the Koch agenda. So those are all, there's some links at the end of the slide. It's 24 slides that I have there for you to take a look at when you get a chance. And you've been listening to Save Our Schools with Dear JCPS on Forward Radio 106.5 FM. And please join us in Frankfurt, Monday and Tuesday, March 29th and 30th. And to learn more about the program and how you can get involved and what you can expect and what to bring and what to do, go to thepeoplesagenda.net, www.thepeoplesagenda.net, and join us for some delicious barbecue and social distancing, safe outdoor activities. There will be lots of things to do and opportunities to advocate to our legislators and make them look us in the eye as they head back in for those final 2 days of legislative session, so that they know that they have an obligation to do what's best for the people who put them into office. And by that, I mean the voters, not the people who fund their campaigns, although that may be how it looks to them. So we need to remind them that it is us, the voters, that put them into office. And if they still continue to vote for these harmful bills after we've shown them and explained to them how harmful they are and how we have been sabotaged here in Jefferson County by our own local leaders that have interest in their own adult agendas instead of what's best for students and taxpayers in the community, then we will remember that, and we will make sure to find someone in their community to explain to their voters what really took place these final 2 days of session in 2021. Thanks again for joining us. Have a great day.